Welcome back to Naval Action and episode 7 of A Letter to the King. So for those new to the series, A Letter to the King is my attempt to capture the week's action on PvP Euro 1, show where all the fights have been taking places, all the moves with the ports, what the nations have been up to. I have to hand out a big thanks to all the contributors that I've managed to snaffle up. So I've got info coming in now from pretty much every nation apart from the Spanish. I don't think I have anyone from the Spanish. But other than that, I've got info coming in from everyone. I can't really check the info. It all seems genuine to me. I'm a believing soul. I'm sure some of the stories may have a slant on them. But it's the best I can do to try and give us an overview, and it's very interesting. So thanks to all the guys who are giving me inputs on that, and most of them are doing that through the Games Labs forums, and they're doing it to my name, which is Jeheil. If you want to send me any info about the biffo that's going on in your neck of the woods, that's well appreciated. So let's have a little look-see at what's been going on. So this was the map as it stood at the end of last week, and if we just remind ourselves, the Spanish had gone nutso over here and snaffled up a whole bunch around Mexico and given the Americans a bit of a push, and were hassling the Brits in this neck of the woods. The pirates were still, Pirate Bay was very active. Big clan holding out here in Carlisle and wreaking merry havoc upon the British pubbies and defending any attempts to retake Carlisle. The Dutch had made the renommee dash of amazingness across the ocean and had managed to snaffle themselves up 2 or 3 ports here, 3 or 4 ports here, very much at the expense of our pirate friends. The Americans had gone hardcore, pushing all the way down, recapturing all of Florida, grabbing some nice new real estate on North Cuba, and pushing into the Bahamas in this neck of the woods. The Danes had been a little bit quiet compared to their normal biffo. They'd lost a few ports, Jeheil and a couple of others in this neck of the woods. The name will come to me shortly. And the Brits had managed to establish a bit of a bridgehead here. The Swedes, bless their cotton socks, had managed to grab some real estate on 3 new landmasses. The French had been relatively quiet. The French and the Danes, from memory, had spent really the whole week pushing the British out of Arves, beautifully pronounced, Mr. J. And with French and Danish collaboration, they'd managed to get rid of the Brits from Arves. And that was a huge fleet battle. I got quite a lot of stuff on that. Pretty much a 25 first-rate fleet battle. So epic was occurring in this neck of the woods. So what happened this week? A week of intrigue, carnage, backstabbing and shenanigans. So first of all, the Americans, the Brits and the Spanish, for most of the week there was a little bit of ninja port grabbing going up. And then on Friday and Saturday server time, it just kicked off in this neck of the woods. And over 2 days, there were 40 port captures and recaptures over here. I have got no idea what the giggity do is, because you will see 8 ports change in an hour, and then 4 ports the next hour, 2 ports the next hour, 4 ports the next hour. I don't know who's setting the timers on them. They're certainly not setting timers on them that they can then defend. In fact, I know it's quite often there were no timers set at all. I'm of the opinion, completely unsubstantiated, that these 3 nations have agreed to capitalize on port rewards and share all the lovely module upgrades we can get, because it's the only thing that explains what would have been 40 port swaps in this neck of the woods. Now, at the end of it, the Spanish probably lost out a little bit. I don't know if it's a coordinated thing, if this is opportunistic capping, if it's just hard to defend the ports around here because there are so many in close proximity. What's happening here is that you're getting 10 flag falls almost instantaneously, and then perhaps 3 or 4 ports are falling, and I guess it's really hard to defend even if you've got 1 or 2 fleets in the area. When 10 flagfalls fall, and quite often it'll be a couple here, a couple here, a couple on the islands under the biffo sign, and maybe 1 or 2 down here, and perhaps it's spreading people thin. There's also a stronger belief now that a couple of the pirate clans have gone under the Spanish flag, and I'm also hearing rumours that one of the Danish clans have now moved under the Spanish flag, and they will have been there now for over a week, so they're probably getting shipped up. So this is going to be a bit of a show in this neck of the woods. We'll have to see how it develops. I'm going to try and get over here for a bit of port action during this week, just so I can have a chat and find out what's happening. I have a couple of ports in this neck of the woods, I'm not saying exactly where. So I might have a little peekaboo over there. Meanwhile, the pirates were having a jolly old time of it in Pirate Bay. They were getting a bit psyched out by flags falling at 3 a.m. their time every day for a week. And at the same time, the Americans were kicking their butt down Florida and across the Bahamas and north of Cuba. And so, somewhat of a surprise, unless you caught the scoop in my interview with one of the clans, they just upsticked and left. They defended the port twice against a couple of decent attacks, pardon me, and then they just upsticked and left. Now, the British were very disappointed about this because they'd really enjoyed hosting the pirates in those waters and are really missing them. And although they never want to see them again, bon voyage. Is the feeling, and it's been delicious. I've been able to get a couple of ship videos done without being ganked. It's been delicious in this neck of the woods, and let's just hope it stays that way until they do a port reset. Now, the pirates, once they'd left Carlisle, it was very obvious why, and it was because they needed to prosecute the war against the Americans, and prosecute it they did. A massive push drove the Americans out of all of these ports here, halfway up the Florida coast on both sides. Although the Americans still held on to a lot of the shallow water ports, they really have been hammered all the way across Florida, and they no longer exist in Cuba. So that rampage is a bit of an uh-oh for USA. It's difficult to know if the Americans are going to be able to hold these hardcore fleets that are going up against them, and they're angry fleets because the Americans came stomping into their territory. So that will be difficult. Of course, the interesting thing is the pirates are now facing pressure elsewhere, and this is the first time really that they've been pushed on multiple fronts. So although they have some considerable forces, it'll be interesting to see whether or not they can keep the momentum up. They're very determined, and they have knocked 7 shades of poop out of the US across a good 10 or 12 ports just towards the close of the week there. The Dutch were one of the folks who were really giving the pirates a hard time, and they've captured a whole bunch of ports. They pretty much now own this area of Haiti, and they're pushing into sort of close to the pirate capital, Mortimer Town. They're pushing up towards Saint Nick and Port de Paix. Actually, there was a funny attack on Port de Paix, I believe. I know one of my clannies was involved. They took only mortar brigs pretty much on a bit of a scientific experiment into Port de Paix. It was all going quite well until a Belle Poule popped in and started killing them all, followed by an entire pirate fleet. And then we discovered mortar brigs is Achilles' heel, which appears to be everywhere on their ship, is the Achilles' heel of a mortar brig. It's got more heels than it's got feet, which is a bit of a problem. But anyway, that was a bit of good fun that was going on there. And the Dutch even nicked a little port off the north here. So the Dutch really have got themselves quite well entrenched. They've got some pretty big fleets. And this is quite interesting now. Can they hold this area? Will the pirates be entertained and carry on pushing into the Americans? How can they do the shallow waters and the deep waters at the same time? And all of this, of course, is with the shadow of the new port battle mechanics coming in, where all of a sudden Santi fleets won't be the be all and end all of port battles. So there'll be 3 new types of ports. There'll be deep water as they are today, which will only be for regional capitals. There'll be shallow waters, which will be pretty much as they are today. And then there'll be, I don't know what you call them, middle waters, which will be the domain of the Connies, the Constitutions, and probably the Ingermanlands. And that will be the rest of the ports. My understanding is it doesn't change what ships you can put into those ports. I think you can still take a first rate and dock it in a middling port. You just can't do the port battle. We'll find that out quite soon. That's due for release the middle of May. So that's perhaps sometime between now and the next episode of The King, or certainly the one after that. There's also new port mechanics with capture zones and BRs, the number of ships you sink, counting towards some sort of strange total, which in itself will be how we calculate victory or loss. So that will be very interesting. You might see Santi fleets screening, so that a Constitution, a fourth-rate fleet, can get into a middling port. There's a frightening prospect. Anyway, onwards and upwards. So the Brits got pushed out of the south of Haiti by the Danes. The Brits did reappear, but not able to take ports. A couple of flags were pulled, but they were never landed. But the Brits also screened and helped defend the Swedes and the Dutch ports here against the Danes. The Danes are very organised, and this is a bit of a warning for these mid-water ports. I know this from first-hand experience and a durability or two. The Danes run some very cunning Connioni fleets with a sort of kiting approach. If you bring in the heavier ships, they'll kite you. If you bring in similar order of ships, they're well practiced in these Connie ships. So you have to be very wary of the Scoobies. They know what they're doing with their Connies, and that might be interesting when the port battles change. And now we get to a description. I'm going to try and give a description. I've been given some great intel here. I hope I do it justice. So I'd always thought this was a little snooze round here. Well, I was wrong many times over. So firstly, the Swedes and the French were sort of. Oh, sorry, I forgot to say that the Swedes who had a port here, that got capped by the pirates. It got capped back by the Brits, but they did manage to grab themselves some new real estate over here on Haiti. They did lose their port down here to the Dutch. I'm not sure what that port ever was, to be honest. It was all a bit strange. I think they were just stretching their legs and having a peekaboo. Anyway, the Swedes and the French had a little bit of biff going on, but they were more or less at a truce. Probably the best way of describing it would have been a truce. Both of them operate in quite a compact area. If you look about how many ports there are in this area and just compare it geographically, this is probably one of the noisiest areas on the map for ports. This little archipelago here. And as far as I can tell from the intel I get, and I've got it from both sides, a couple of rogue French clans snaffled up a couple of Swedish ports, and this put the truce on a bit of a wobble. And there was much gibbering in the French national chat and after lots of ohi-hohi, the French decided to let the Swedes have those 2 ports back, but my understanding is that that wasn't a popular decision, and that there is, well, at the very least, let's call it significant tensions between the French and the Swedes. Now, the Swedes, they only hold 12, 13 ports. They're the smallest nation, and yet they've got some of the biggest action going. They are my Leicester City. They are my favourite small team on the map. So apart from the fact they've made a run over here and snaffled up a port there, hurrah for that. I've also discovered that during the week the Danes let the pirates grab up one of the ports here, Road Town. I think this was the pirates trying to teach the Swedes a lesson for coming in this neck of the woods. And from Road Town the pirates launched an attack and hit a couple of ports up that belonged to the Swedes. Now the Swedes managed to push them out, but in doing so they've got themselves involved with the Danes, and there could well now be open warfare between the Swedes and the Danes. Now historically the Danes bashed the Swedes back to a single port, and a truce was broken where the Danes returned all but 2 of the ports, and a truce was called. Now I know the Swedes were very upset that the Danes had let the pirates in for what was effectively a proxy war against them. And now the Swedes, and I know they're looking for content, and I know they're looking for PvP. Well, mission accomplished, Sweden, mission accomplished, because right now this tiny, and I don't mean insignificant or small in a bad way, but just small in the number of ports they hold, and one would imagine the number of players they have, is pretty much at war with the pirates, the Danes, and perhaps even the French. Now, when you've only got 12 or 13 ports, if you're new to the game and you like being an underdog, go and join up with the Swedes, because they're copping it in spades at the moment. It's probably quite hard to run an economy with only 12 or 13 ports. So they're my new favourite little train that could, the Swedes, and bless their cotton socks. We've seen a lot of ports change hands over here, but really it's the action with the Brits have been relatively quiet this week, apart from mad weekend of port swapping over here. We've seen the pirates really push the Americans back. We've seen the Dutch consolidate at the pirate expense. The Swedes have got a couple of ports here, but really this is where all the action is. Right now, this is where all the action is. The pirates are out of there. The French were allowed to grab up Havres after the Danes vacated it. So I think the Danes and the French are good mates. I think the Danes and the pirates are good mates. I think the Spanish and the pirates are good mates. The Brits, the Dutch, the Swedes and the Americans seem to be good mates. But that's where the core divisions lie now. Pretty much everyone else is at war. And even good mates just means you don't attack each other. It doesn't really mean much more. There is talk in the forums about the new diplomacy patches coming in. I've been getting involved with all of the input I'm receiving now from my contacts in the various nations. I'm not even sure they need a diplomacy patch. The shenanigans that's going on, the internal rifts within clans, clan leadership changes, rogue clans breaking truces. I know when the Danes let the pirates into Road Town, that wasn't some unanimous Danish national decision. It was perhaps a couple of clans who allowed it to happen, and a lot of other people weren't happy with it at all. So you'd have thought the Danes and the Swedes might work together in that neck of the woods, but no, not at all. And with the pirates and the French in the mixer, it's on for young and old. Now, will the Dutch intervene? They've been friendly with the Swedes in this neck of the woods, but they've got a very secure coastline here. Who knows? So let's have a look at where the biff's going to be next week. Well, we've got the module cartel here who just swap ports for modules as far as I can tell, or they're the worst at setting port timer defenses in the world. I can't tell what's going on there. I suspect there might be some action around here. I think our John Pollock impression, which is Haiti, is where a lot of the primary action's going to be going on. The Swedes are going to have just all sorts of shenanigans going on in this neck of the woods. And I guess the big question is, can the Americans respond to the presence of the pirates? The pirates have biffed them halfway up the coast here, a little bit up the coast there. How far will they push? How far will they push? Will they run into the shallows? Will that be their operations next? What's going to happen with port battles when they change? It's all very good. It's all very exciting, plenty of fresh stuff going on. And one thing I'm going to add to not this week's but next week's letter to the King, I'm going to add another screen in after the tally board, and it'll just be the map. And if you've got screenshots or videos of battles that I've talked about in the game, in the letter, link them in the YouTube comments, and what I'll do is I'll annotate them onto the video. So for example, last week someone sent me both a video and a screenshot of where the Danes sunk half a dozen, 15 of the British defending first rates in order to capture Arves. One of the Brits sent me a video of one of the earlier defences of Arves. So what I'll do is I will annotate them on here, so you'll be able to link to the screenshots and link to the videos, and we'll see if that becomes useful. If not, I'll forget it. It's easy enough not to do it again. So next week, if you're involved in some biffos, just either PM me on the official forums to Jeheil with a link, and just say, you know, this was the Spanish defense of Isil against the Brits, and it's a screenshot, or even better, it's a video, and I'll put a little annotation in there. I'll probably use one symbol for a video, one symbol for a screenshot. I don't want a screenshot of a ship blowing up. I want the end of the port battle screenshot. Or if there's huge open world screening, again, I don't want 3 ships against 4 ships. That's fantastic if you're involved and you may have been extremely heroic. But if it's a decent one, you know, a 10 on 10. So for example, if the Danish bastards who sunk me off Ile Vache, I think it was, when their Consti fleet gave us a good shellacking, you know, that would be a good screenshot. I won't be using that because it shows me at the bottom of the sea, but by example, that would be a good screenshot. So finally, we come to tally board. The tally is splinters, sail and blood. Well, the Brits, for all their shenanigans over around Mexico and the Yucatan, and not really much action anywhere else with the Brits. It was a bit disappointing, I thought, this week. But they've made a net gain of 4 ports. The pirates have gone bazookas, and they've snaffled up 11 ports, and much of that has been, they've snaffled up more than that of the Americans, but they've lost a few elsewhere to the Dutch. So the pirates shoot up to number 2 again. They were 80 ports only 3 weeks ago, and I think they're looking for a top spot again. It's the Americans who've taken the thumping, and they've lost 15 ports. The Dutch expansion into Haiti has increased their tally to 5. Oh, I've got me thing goes the wrong way around. Sorry about that. I've just noticed that now. The Spanish, they lost 7 ports, predominantly to the Brits, a couple to the Americans, over in the Yucatan, Mexico way. The French gained a couple, I think at the expense of, oh no, they swapped them with the Danes effectively, with Arves and t'other one. The Danes broke even, but were involved in all sorts of biff. So I mean, they gave up a couple of ports to the French, I think, but in return They took a couple of ports back off the Brits, and the Swedes, despite being involved in some brutal biffing, held their position, which isn't difficult to do when you've only got 13 ports, but they held their position. Let's hope they've still got double figures next week. Bless their cotton socks. And that is about that for episode 7 of Letter to the King. I hope you enjoyed that. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. Please keep sending me the intel. It's been great getting it. It's been great just chatting with most of the people about the intel. The passion about the game is fantastic. I know we're all looking forward to the new port battle mechanics. I suspect there'll be a lot of biffo just to get a feel for it, see if it's any good. It really opens the game up to the frigate class in those middling level ports. We'll see how the Santi fleets carry on holding regional capitals and what the role of the first rates and the ships of the line becomes. But that's about it. So I will see you on the ocean, and I will catch you.